You don't belong here anymore. Clara's voice cut through the cold air of the studio. The sound of her heels echoed on the marble floor. Emma stood by the window holding a half-finished canvas. Her fingers were stained with blue paint. Outside, the autumn light turned the old buildings of Ashbourne gold. Inside, silence hung between the two sisters. Clara crossed her arms. This gallery represents our family, Emma, not your little hobby. Emma did not answer. She looked at the empty frames stacked against the wall. They once held her mother's work, now replaced with luxury art. Clara's reflection shimmered on the glass, sharp and distant. Their mother Margaret stood by the door. Her pearls caught the light. Clara is right, she said. This is not a charity. You made your choice years ago. Emma turned her face toward her. I made a choice to live, not to obey. Margaret's hand tightened around her clutch. You embarrassed this family. You ran away with that boy and threw away everything. Emma wiped her hands on a rag. I built my own life. I did not steal from anyone. Clara's voice rose. You stole our father's trust. You broke him. Henry, their father, appeared in the doorway. His hair had turned white, his shoulders heavy. He looked at Emma like a stranger. Enough, he said. We have guests. Leave your drama outside these walls. He walked past her, avoiding her eyes. Emma set down her brush. She left the studio without another word. Outside, wind carried the smell of wet leaves. She walked past the sign that once read Bradford Gallery, now repainted with Clara's name. She pulled her coat tighter and kept walking. In her small apartment above the bakery, paint covered every wall. Her son Lucas sat on the floor drawing a tree. Mom, look, he said, showing the page. The tree had golden leaves and deep roots. Emma smiled. It's beautiful. Lucas grinned. It's our tree. The one in the park. She nodded. The same park where she once met Ethan, Lucas's father. She opened the window. The sound of children playing drifted in. The life she built was simple. Teaching art classes, selling small paintings, raising her son. But the name Bradford still followed her like a shadow. Years earlier, Emma had been the pride of her father's gallery. Her paintings drew local praise. Then she met Ethan at an art fair. He was poor, quiet, and full of dreams. When she became pregnant, her world collapsed overnight. Her parents called it a scandal. Henry shouted. Margaret wept. Clara watched in silence. You've ruined us, Henry said. You're no longer part of this family. She left that night with a suitcase and a sketchbook. Rain soaked her dress. Ethan promised they would make it together, but when his chance to study abroad came, he left. He never looked back. Emma worked in cafes and studios, painting late into the night. When Lucas was born, she held him close and whispered, "We'll be fine. Just you and me." 7 years later, her work hung in a small community center. People began to notice. One morning, Grace, the local curator, visited. "These are good," she said. "Real emotion, real craft." Emma thanked her, unsure if she meant it. A month later, Grace called again. "A collector saw your work. He's interested." The collector's name was Joseph Grant, a critic from New York. He arrived one rainy afternoon, elegant and polite. He walked through her studio, studying each painting in silence. At last he said, "You have something they don't, honesty." Emma did not know how to respond. "Would you join a local exhibition next month?" he asked. She agreed. The exhibition took place at the new Bradford Gallery. Clara stood at the entrance, shaking hands with sponsors. When she saw Emma's name on the list, her smile faltered. "She can't show here," she whispered to her assistant. But Joseph's signature on the invitation left her no choice. Inside, lights illuminated the polished floors and pristine walls. Emma arrived in a simple gray dress, Lucas holding her hand. The air smelled of perfume and champagne. She felt every eye turned toward her. Clara approached. "You're bold to show your face here," she said quietly. "I'm here for the exhibition," Emma replied. "Not for approval." Clara's lips tightened. She turned away as guests gathered around one of Emma's paintings. A portrait of a girl standing under rain, half lit, half shadowed. Someone whispered, "It feels alive." Henry noticed the crowd and walked closer. When he saw the signature, Emma Bradford, his hand trembled slightly. He said nothing, but Margaret's face went pale. Later during the speeches, Joseph took the stage. "True art doesn't come from comfort. It comes from those who lost everything and kept creating." He gestured toward Emma. The room turned silent. Clara forced a smile. "Thank you, Mr. Grant. We appreciate new voices." Her tone carried a sharp edge. After the event, reporters surrounded Emma. They wanted to know about her past, her family, her son. She answered only what was necessary. Lucas clung to her hand. That night, Margaret arrived at her apartment uninvited. "I don't like the attention you're getting," she said coldly. "You're dragging our name into the mud again." Emma poured tea, calm. "I'm not using your name anymore." Margaret's eyes swept over the small, messy studio. "Then stop painting like one of us." She left without another word. Lucas looked up. "Was that Grandma?" Emma nodded. "Yes, but she doesn't understand yet." A week later, the gallery announced a new event, the legacy of the Bradfords. Clara was at the center of it. All family artists would be featured, but Emma's name was missing. Grace came to see her. "They can't ignore you forever," she said. Emma smiled faintly. "They already did once." Still, she painted. A large canvas took shape, a portrait of her father sitting alone, light falling across his unfinished sketch. She titled it The Silence. On the night of the Legacy exhibition, Emma walked into the gallery uninvited, holding the painting. Clara turned furious. You can't bring that in. Henry saw her frozen by the sight. Let her, he said quietly. Emma placed the portrait on an empty easel. Guests turned. Whispers filled the hall. The resemblance was striking. The quiet grief in Henry's eyes. The distance in his posture. He stepped closer. You painted this? Yes. He looked at it for a long time. The noise around them faded. Finally he said, it's me. The words were barely audible. Margaret stood still, her hand on her chest. Clara's expression cracked. Reporters took photos. Headlines followed the next day. Estranged daughter stuns art world with family portrait. The gallery's reputation exploded. Both praised and criticized. Clara raged. You humiliated us, she shouted. You humiliated yourself, Emma replied. Her voice low but steady. Weeks passed. Henry came to her studio one morning. He looked smaller, older. He placed a folded letter on her table. I was wrong, he said simply. I forgot why I started painting in the first place. He glanced at Lucas. You have my eyes, he whispered. Margaret visited next. Her tone was softer. Henry wants to reopen the old section of the gallery. He wants to include your students. Emma listened quietly. I don't need your approval, she said. Margaret nodded. I know, but maybe we need yours. Winter came. Snow covered the streets of Ashbourne. Inside Emma's home, lights glowed warm. Lucas painted beside the fireplace. Henry taught him how to mix colors. Margaret brought tea, watching in silence. Clara didn't come that night. She was busy rebuilding her brand. But her absence hung in the air like a shadow. Spring arrived. Emma's work was accepted into a national exhibition. Grace hugged her. You've earned this. Henry and Margaret attended the opening quietly, staying at the back as the crowd admired Emma's series. Outside, reporters waited again. One asked, what drives your art now? Emma paused before answering. Silence, she said. It used to hurt. Now it teaches me. Months later, Clara appeared at her studio. No cameras, no audience. Only the sound of rain outside. I sold the gallery, she said. Emma looked up from her easel. Why? I couldn't live in its shadow anymore. Clara hesitated, then placed an envelope on the table. It's for Lucas's scholarship from me. She turned to leave. Emma stopped her. Thank you. Clara didn't reply. She just nodded once. Years passed. Ashbourne changed, but the small studio stayed the same. Paintings filled the walls. Forests, rivers, faces. Lucas grew into a young artist. One day he placed a finished canvas on the easel. It showed Emma painting under morning light. He smiled. I call it Mother at Work. Henry's voice came from behind. She reminds me of someone I once knew. Emma laughed softly. She reminds me of who I became. When Henry passed away the next winter, his will included a single note. Art survives only in truth. Emma carries it forward. Margaret moved to a quiet cottage near Emma's home. Clara visited, sometimes bringing flowers. They no longer spoke of the past. They didn't need to. One evening Emma walked through the gallery, now renamed the House of Light. On one wall hung The Silence beside Henry's early sketches. On another, Lucas's first award-winning piece. The lights shimmered softly against the glass. She stood still, her reflection blending with theirs. For the first time, the silence felt complete.